record to the cloud. All right, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us. Today, we are going to have a career spotlight event for Wieden and Kennedy. So before we get started, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping things. So over on the right, you guys can get the check-in. So this is really helpful for you students in high school who are attending the career event. So the counselor knows where you're at, and if for the future, if you don't remember which event you went to this year, you can see exactly which ones you did. Over to the left, we have the great questions document. And so these are really great questions to ask the presenter. I know you get a lot of information during these meetings, and it's always great to have some ready to go questions for them. And then over in the middle, we have the evaluation form. This is what's needed to get that graduation requirement. So make sure to fill it out. Preferably do it right after the event when all the information is fresh on your mind. And then be fully present, try to stay off your phones. If you have any questions, you can type it in the chat. If you feel comfortable with your camera on, feel free to turn it on. You will not show up on the recording. And then again, don't forget to fill out your evaluation. All right, that is it for me.
Kat, can you have Katie do the host?
Yes, I can.
Hi, everyone, and I'm here.
Hi, Katie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, it's great to be here. I think we might be waiting for one or two more folks from the Wieden and Kennedy side, if that is okay with you guys.
Yeah, it's totally fine.
Okay.
And will you let us know who are your panels so we can make them as a host and spotlight them?
Yes, I think they will put their cameras on, but Lene Spruce and Jason Strickland, and I'm anticipating one more. How's everyone doing this morning? Oh, there's Jenny. This is our last panelist. All right. Well, I think we're good to go. Are you guys good if I kick things off and we dive in?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. Thanks you guys for being here today. It's so weird looking into a computer and only seeing my colleagues' faces, but I truly appreciate everybody being here. And I know Zoom is also taxing. So feel free to keep your cameras off if that works best for you, but I hope we can spend the next 45 minutes to an hour giving you, a glimpse into our lives at Wieden and Kennedy. And we really believe these opportunities to visit with students are important. You're going to hear from all of my colleagues sharing their journey and how they got into advertising. But we want everybody here today to believe that a career in advertising and in any creative field is possible. And the first important step is knowing what those opportunities are so you can seek them out, so you can ask more questions and learn and grow. So thanks for inviting us here today. Everybody that's joining me from Wieden and Kennedy enthusiastically raised their hands when I reached out looking for participants. So I also appreciate that among my team as well. And before we kind of dive into sharing a little bit more about our roles and responsibilities and kind of like our individual worlds, I just wanted to say my name's Katie Hull. I'll kind of serve as moderator, and I'm director of communications for the Portland office. And for those of you who don't know that much about Wieden and Kennedy, you're going to learn a lot in the next 45 minutes, but we are a creative agency based in Portland, Oregon. One of our founders, Dan Wieden, grew up here in Portland. He attended Grant High School. He went to University of Oregon. And his partner, David Kennedy, grew up in Colorado and Oklahoma and lived in Chicago before making his way out to Oregon. And today we're a big company with 8 offices around the globe and around 1,200 employees. But I like to remind everybody that we started here, and we started with just 2 people who were unhappy with the status quo and really believed in the power of creativity. They wanted to make a place that was for the people and a place for people to make the best work of their lives. So you're gonna hear a little bit about what we all do in various kind of disciplines and practices within advertising. And we all have, I'm excited because the panelists today all have completely different roles. So I think you'll learn a lot. And I think you hopefully can identify, you might not identify with someone's roles, but you might with someone else's. So I think the biggest thing to keep an open mind about is there's tons of opportunities within advertising, and we need your perspective. We need more stories. So that's my little preamble. If students, if you guys have questions throughout, we're happy to answer them. We're also happy to, obviously we'll save some time to that for the end for that as well. And to my Wieden team, like, this is a dialogue. So, jump in, ask more questions of your colleagues if they're onto something really interesting. Like it's definitely not meant to be a one-way conversation. So I think to kick things off, I'm going to invite each of you guys to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your role, your role, and how you got into the business. Who wants to go first? Jenny, you're off.
Okay.
What?
You gonna go, Jenny, or go ahead?
Oh no, I don't want to go first.
Okay, Lene, you got this.
All right. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Lene. I am the head of social for Wieden and Kennedy. I'm actually probably the newest person here. I've been on the job for about 2 months, completely brand new to advertising. And I got my start in advertising. Actually, I was recruited in like 2020 to work on some campaigns, and I kind of liked it. And I was like, this is really cool. And it piqued my interest. And at that point, I was like, I actually want to work in ads. I want to work with really creative people. And I think that that's something that really drew me to this industry and this career. Working in social media, I was always that person that did this thing that a lot of people really didn't know about. And like I had a whiteboard in my office, was always tinkering, always on my phone. And it was really exciting to have the opportunity to work with other creative people.
Are we just doing intros and then getting into it? Or?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Let's go across and give everybody like a quick kind of intro, and then we can dive in further.
Cool. I guess I'll go next because I interrupted. My name is Jenny. I'm an artist who ended up working in advertising. I'm a copywriter for the Nike team. I've been with Wieden now a little over 2 years. I was recruited. I wasn't looking at advertising at all. I didn't actually know that much about it, but I was recruited because of my personal work. I've been writing and self-publishing and getting published cartoons and humor pieces and things like that, mostly through Instagram. And yeah, Wieden liked my work and they said, what about advertising? And I said, what about it? So here I am, and I'm still doing it.
Cool. I'm Jason Strickland. I'm a media director here at Wieden. I've been here 7 years. Right now, I oversee the Old Spice and Riot Games accounts. Riot Games, they make a game called League of Legends and Valorant. You should try them if you haven't. I've worked at a couple of agencies like Wieden, where media is in the same place as creative. So my job as a media person is actually to decide where the ads go versus making the ads. So, what TV shows to put them on, how to target them on TikTok or Facebook or what have you. I actually got into my job. I wanted to work in advertising when I was in college. I actually wanted to be a copywriter like Jenny. But when I was a freshman and I had been taking a copywriting course, actually the Boston Red Sox won the World Series, and and they were cursed. And right after the team was kind of celebrating on the field, a Nike ad ran that was celebrating kind of the 100-year curse that had been put on the Boston Red Sox. And I'm from Seattle. I don't care about the Red Sox, but it made me feel like super emotional, like almost to the point of tearing up. And about a year later, I took a class about media planning and realized that the reason I felt that way was because someone chose to put that TV spot exactly where it was. And if it hadn't been where it was, I wouldn't have felt that way. And so I decided that media was really interesting, and that could be an interesting way to contribute to the job that I thought I wanted. So I pursued that, and eventually got a job at an agency in Seattle, and kind of bounced around until I got here.
I love that anecdote, Jason. That's a good story. And I guess I jumped to you guys. I didn't really share that much about me either. So I'll quickly add that similar to Jason, I discovered advertising and public relations, which is kind of like the arm of advertising and marketing that my world is, in college. And I don't have that like pivotal moment that Jason so like beautifully shared of like seeing that ad. But I did have some family members, an uncle and a cousin, who lived in New York City, and they were doing PR and communications. So in my role, I'm working on the opposite side, opposite spectrum of Jason's field, but we work very much together. So while Jason is helping clients and teams decide where the ads run, and specifically placing them, I'm actually pitching media. So I don't get to pay for any placements, but I'm pitching stories. I'm trying to get the launch of the campaign or a company covered by journalists to help kind of further the storytelling. So I do that for Wieden and Kennedy and represent Wieden and Kennedy. But I also like advise all of our teams in the building when stuff is launching. And I've been at Wieden and Kennedy for 12 years. So you guys can see like we have from 2 months up to 12 years. Some people who have kind of like long thought they might be in this field for several years, but then people who kind of just found it at later stages of their career, which is also exciting. So guys, I don't know where you guys want to take this. I was thinking we could dive into more about your role, like the specific skills, qualities, that make you successful in your occupation. But I'm also thinking it might be helpful if you can like think on the moment, like what are some of the projects and things you're working on right now to kind of give the students some like tangible examples of your work. Does anyone want to?
I can jump in. I feel like my work is so closely related to the students, Gen Z. So me working on social media, a big part of my role is figuring out how do we reach our audiences on social. One of the cool things that I'm working on right now is working with Ospice actually. So we're working on a new kind of social strategy. So we're figuring out how we want to play on TikTok versus Facebook versus Twitter versus Instagram. And oftentimes, I think in my experience, what I've seen is social is still so very new. But at this point, a lot of organizations know that they need it to be really successful. So what we're trying to do is create like a social media playbook that we can have that kind of shows what our voice is like on social, what kind of things we should post, what does a video look like on TikTok for us, what kind of influencers we work with. So we're creating like this big document that we'll be able to share with our client team so that they can see exactly how we play in the space. That will allow us to move a little more faster so that we can move at the speed of culture versus in advertising, there are like all these layers and bureaucracies and approvals to get work done. So hopefully the goal is that this will cut out some of that. I think for a long time, I'm a person that I started on Twitter when it launched. I was in college, was it 2008, 2009? And I was like, what is this thing, this Twitterbird? And I got really excited about it. And I was kind of an ambassador in undergrad and got people on this Twitter platform. And I was actually a PR major. I knew I was kind of working for the like, I knew that that's what I was going to do. And I was kind of like, I actually like this digital thing a little bit better. So I bit the bug on that and I took a deep dive. I actually started out working with Bad Boy and I worked on a film. It's kind of old now, but Get 'Em to the Greek. So this was very early in social media days where there were like lots of message boards, like looking on there. There was a complimentary album. So, seeing what people liked in the music videos and taking that back to the team. And also it was when Facebook first launched their brand pages. It was very, very early, very new. So being on the early adoption side of that, to now having really like recognizable roles in social, it's been really, really cool. I think some of the skills that make you successful in a role and working with social is just being able to move very, very quickly and very fast. If something's trending, how do we take this conversation and add our own voice to it, or just being able to communicate with people. So I'm constantly a person that's on my phone. I'm constantly looking at stuff. And you also have to have very thick skin, because, our work is so visible. Like the first time you post a tweet, they're either going to hate it or they're going to love it. There have been times when, you posted something and it wasn't successful, but you have to be able to just jump in and keep trying again. So I used to work for the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And I remember I was very new. I had no idea, like museums. In hindsight, I probably would have been terrified if I knew the role that I was taking on, but I didn't. So I think that made it okay. But I made a mistake, some historical fact, and this woman wrote me a note, and I remember I had it printed in my office for like 5 years. And it was like, I understand that this is a new thing, but we are counting on you to tell this story and to get it right. And that's something that like just really drove me home. And we were able to create some really good work from that. And I know a lot of you probably use social, you're on the TikToks, you're on Instagram, you're on all of that. So, when you see a cool ad from one of your favorite influencers on social, or even if you're creating content yourself, like there is definitely opportunities there in social media, for sure.
That's awesome. Lene, there was a question in the chat. Do you work with social media influencers?
Yes, often. That's a big part of my job, actually, is to work with social influencers. I actually have really great relationships with a lot, because I was so early into the field that, I built relationships with influencers before it was like a really formal thing. So now I have friends who are like really big, and I'm like, I remember when you just had like 30,000 followers and I just invited you to like this preview, and now, they weren't even being paid back then. It was just like, free swag or like free invites to stuff. And now, you can be a full-time content creator. So it's a big part of my job. Yes.
Yeah. There, you got another question in the chat. What are the most important skills or personal qualities needed for the job? So you touched on thick skin. What else?
I would say you also need to be very organized. So one of the things that most of us do is you need to have a content calendar, keeping all of your content in one place. And I think also being open to learning and trying new things. Social constantly moves very, very fast. The thing that worked yesterday might not work today. So being open to constantly shifting and changing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great point. And I actually think that each one of us on the call today could probably say that about our specific disciplines and fields. I don't think you realize, when you're growing up and you're in school, you're learning for that career. And you kind of just, I at least didn't think that like I'd continue to learn and grow as much, if not way more, once you're kind of in the career field working. And you really do, like Lene said.
Almost every day.
Yeah, every day you're learning something new, and it informs it informs the next day or the next decision. That's so exciting. And who wants to dive in next? Jenny, Jason?
I kind of don't remember the question that we're answering right now. At this point, we're covering a lot fast.
We were all kind of sharing like what a little bit more along the lines of like what you do as a copywriter on Nike, but also you can draw from you mentioned you were a designer before this, so you can tap into both worlds, but skills and personal qualities that make you successful in what you do.
Cool. So copywriting, for you guys who don't know what that is, it does involve a lot of writing. So like when you see like an ad campaign, you'll see like a big line on it that's like kind of call to action, something to do, like that's like pretty much on me to write something like that. But copywriters are also more so responsible of like coming up with a campaign idea with an art director. So you work in like a creative team all the time. And so the client comes to you with a problem. They're like, we want to say this to the world, but we don't know how to make it interesting. So that's what a copywriter and art director do. They think of like, how can you deliver that message in a unique way, and how can you tell like a unique story that makes sense for the brand. So yeah, it's a lot of idea generating, but then with copywriting, yeah, you are like responsible for like the writing a lot of the time in a presentation. So you do have to know how to use words. Grammar, maybe not so much. I struggle, but I make it by. And then also like script writing. So like art directors and copywriters like work together to like create like a TV commercial, and both of them are like responsible for the ideas of it. But the copywriter is pretty much the person who's putting like those words to paper. So like yeah, literally writing the script, even though it's maybe an idea that the art director and copywriter came up with together. So that's really cool. It's like, yeah, you're definitely like playing in the realm of ideas, but if you're someone who's like inclined to use words, it's like a really fun place for you to play. Yeah, and with advertising, just the idea really can be anything at all. So like even like as a copywriter, like I'll work on something that like maybe it's a commercial that has no words. Like, you know, it's like, but you're like writing the script and you're going with the idea. So really it's just like based in ideas. And I think that's like for advertising, like to answer the question of like what kind of like skills do you need? I think for any of our jobs, like we touched on this a little bit too, it's like you got to be like, you got to have thick skin, because you're going to come up with a lot of stuff that's going straight into the trash over and over and over. You can't take it personally, because it's like it's not worth taking too personally. Like you can get excited, but you can't live or die by your successes and failures in this business. And yeah, you have to be like just kind of someone who likes to like, who's curious about things, that's like curious about culture. And I think like having a really strong sense of self, like always helps. And in that sense, like a strong point of view, like strong interest, like something like a unique perspective that you're bringing to the table, like a way of telling stories, but then also like sense of self. And like, at the end of the day, you like know who you are and you have a life outside of work, because it's just, it's a tough business.
Jenny, how do you know if you're, more of a copywriter or an art director, like in that realm, or do you explore both paths? Is there anything you could share there?
That's a great question. Yeah, when I got hired here at Wieden, they weren't sure if I was going to be an art director or a copywriter, because I have a degree in painting. I went to art school. And then a lot of my work that I'm known for, that I got hired for, is like both visual and also like a lot of copy, because it's cartooning. Like, so it's me drawing and then writing like captions and stories and blah, blah, blah. I think like whether you're an art director or a copywriter, like you're going to have skills in both. And I think everyone kind of does anyways. Like there's so many times too where like the art director writes the line that works, or there's times where like the copywriter's like, what if it looked like this? It's like, you're going to have like intelligence in both, but and some people like do bounce back and forth between roles, like officially, but then also unofficially. And I think like, I don't know, like there's room to grow. There's room to go back and forth. And then maybe just like, I don't know, go with your gut about it. I mean, if you don't like presenting, you don't like talking, like I feel like a lot of copywriters are talkers. So like, if you don't like talking at all, like maybe you're more an art director. I don't know. They're both pretty related, I would say.
Yeah. No, that makes tons of sense. And I actually like was knowing a little bit about your background. I was sitting here being like, actually, I'm kind of surprised she's the copywriter, like knowing how visual your design background was.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. And then I also went to design school for a moment too. I've done a lot of like, yeah, done it all at this point.
Do you want to talk a minute about cartooning? Because I bet you people would be interested in that.
Sure. I think so. When I say cartooning, it's not animation. It's more just like old school style, like one could say an illustrator. But I like cartoonists better because I really feel like it's like words and pictures together, and the pictures are like hand drawn by me. And the thing about cartooning that I really love is that like you're just like, or at least the way that I do it, you're just like 100% like in control of this world that you're creating. It's like you're drawing the picture, like, and you're writing the words to it. It's just like, it's just kind of like a cool place to play. And it's just sort of where I ended up being able to like most clearly and consistently communicate ideas in the way that I think. Cause I love painting. I love like performing. I love all kinds of things. But when it comes down to, if I just need to get something out, I can always cartoon it. It's just like, it's always there for me.
Cool. There was one question in the chat. What are the different tasks for art directors and copywriters?
Great. So the copywriter will be the person who writes the script. So it's like an art director and a copywriter will work together to like maybe think of the idea of like what the script will be, but the copywriter will be the one who's like really getting in there, like in the weeds about the writing. And they're kind of like, they're the person who's more responsible for writing like lines you'd see on a billboard, or like taglines, like just do it, things like that. Yeah, so even though they're like responsible too for a little bit of like visual stuff, like really when it comes down to the end of the day, like you're the one in the presentation grinding at the words. And then the art director will be the person who's like responsible for like, those colors don't match, like what, that's the wrong red. Like, why are you like, that red is off. And then it's kind of like upfront too, when coming up with an idea and creating a campaign. Like I've heard this and it seems to be sort of true, like copywriters are sort of like more like heavy loaded on the front, where they're like working on the presentation, like writing the scripts, doing all those like fine tuning things. But when it comes to like production, like art directors are stepping in more to like really like how it looks, which is a lot, like how something looks, like working with like photographers and the director and just like really capturing like what they want it to be like visually. Yeah.
That makes sense. That reminds me, one of my friends at Wieden is an art director. And when I watch movies with him, what his eye catches in a movie and the detail and complexity of things just goes right over my head. At the end of the movie, he'll be like, did you see this? Did you see? I'm like, nope, didn't notice any of that.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, let's turn to you. The question was, I'll remind you, skills, personal qualities, things that make you, successful in your role. And if it helps to illustrate like an example or two of a project, like where you're working through something.
Yeah, so I can explain the role broadly, I think, first too. So one of the things I love about media, and actually stepping all the way back, one of the things that makes Wieden and Kennedy unique is that we're an agency where creatives and media people work together. And actually, like as you learn more about ad agencies, that's somewhat rare. Oftentimes there are media specific agencies and creative specific agencies. But I think regardless, like your role as a media person is similar in both, in that we get to be a part of kind of the entire creative process. So I can kind of talk through that. Like at Wieden, the media person kind of starts from the very beginning on a project, helping input on what's called a brief. So it's essentially a distillation of what the client wants to sell or communicate. who the audience is, how much money we have, all kind of the key details that a copywriter and art director will need to then come up with an idea. And so from the onset, media is responsible for owning the understanding of the audience. So beyond just their age, what makes them them, right? What platforms do they use? What's interesting that's happening in culture with them? Like we'll often, collaborate with social strategists or other strategists to kind of build that picture of who the audience is, and then start to at least give some thought starters of where an idea should manifest out in the world based on how an audience uses media. So, hey, this audience is super into TikTok, and did you know there's this new functionality on TikTok? How could we hack that or do something interesting? And then the teams will go away and the creative teams will go away and come up with a bunch of ideas. And then when they share back and kind of before we go to clients, it's media's job to kind of come in and kind of bulletproof those ideas. So how do they, are we thinking about the right channels? What are the other formats it can show up in? And then you build a plan, a media plan that's essentially, here's all the places we're going to show up and here's how it complements the work, right? So I think that Nike example that I gave is a perfect example. That was one where at the time, they knew that there was a 50-50 chance that the Red Sox would win. So our media team was on the phone to Fox saying, hey, we want this spot right after they all pile on the field, but we're going to send you 2 spots. And depending on what happens, you're either going to run this regular Nike ad or you're going to run the Red Sox win ad. And that's all kind of the media team doing their work there, right? Making sure you're matching the message with where someone experiences it. And then on the back end, kind of after everyone's high-fived and everyone else is done, media oftentimes is responsible with kind of the strategy teams of coming in and analyzing, how did it do, right? Like, did people engage with this more than other content that we've done before or that other brands have done before? What are the things that we've learned, right? Like, were we in the right channels? How would we do it different next time? And then we just do the whole thing over again. And sometimes that process is a 6-month long process. And sometimes it's condensed down to like a week. Like, hey, we've got an idea, let's go do it. Let's pull something together. The clients didn't ask us for it. But anyway, what's fun about media is you kind of get to be a part of all of the phases, even the part where everyone's kind of done with what we've done. What makes people or qualities that I think are really helpful in this job? I think we've all said it, but curiosity. I think what's interesting about media is like everyone to a certain extent understands media because of the amount of time that we spend with it, right? Like the average adult spends 80% of their waking hours interacting with media, either on their phone or watching TV or listening to a podcast or whatever. And so there's kind of all of these things that you can observe about your own behavior, about your friends' behavior, and then just do a lot of kind of reading about like, is that an actual way people interact with this thing, right? Like, is it normal that I fast forward through the podcast ads? Or I actually like podcast ads, but I would never listen to an ad on the radio, like on the regular radio, like I would click the button, right? So there's nuances. So I think like curiosity about the subject matter is really important. And also people, like I was a psych minor, so I'm naturally interested in people, but like human behavior is a giant, like if you're spending 80% of your waking day with media, then curiosity about people is important. I think another one would be collaboration. One of the things I love about Wieden is, and maybe why it's a little even hard to answer a question like, should be an art director or copywriter, is like good ideas can come from anywhere and everyone contributes to an idea. And so as I mentioned, like we're always sharing things in kind of midstream or as like thoughts develop, and everyone's got a thing to contribute to it. So collaboration is important. And then extremely important for media is organization. We spend almost all the money. So because ads are expensive to buy. And there's a rule, in any job you have, never mess up the money. And being organized is super helpful there. Also, like if you're a part of the whole process, right? Like you need to be super organized about where you're at, who you need to talk to, and so I'd say those are the kind of the three things. That answered the whole question, right?
Yeah, no, that was great. And we've got one more for you in the chat. In today's social media age, do you get more reach in social media platforms than TV advertising? And maybe Lay, you could jump in too, because we're in your world. Like, do you guys have thoughts on that?
I can start. So, and it's really funny, actually. I started working in advertising in 2008. And at that time, Facebook did not have ads yet. And so like, I've got to like watch it from, that was like and they came, I remember all of the things I read that year was like, when is Facebook going to come out with ads? And then now we're here and that's all that's there. The straight answer to that question is that social media does have a higher reach than TV. Brands over the last 15 years have slowly been decreasing their investment in TV, but oftentimes they're putting it into other channels that are similar to TV, because one of the disadvantages to an advertiser with paid social media is that people don't like ads. I don't like, to be clear, like I don't like ads either. And I avoid them at all costs, right? And so in social, that's really, really easy to do. And so the time that we get with people is very limited. And so, TV is a pretty captive environment. In particular, people are watching live, but that's happening less and less. So like for us, it's actually a challenge from a media perspective of like, where do we find the places where maybe people are more likely to engage with an ad for a little longer? How do influencers play into that, right? Like you're more likely to watch something for a while if it looks like it was made from a person instead of looked like we were trying to match colors perfectly, But yeah, tons more time spent on social, but from an advertising perspective, it's a double-edged sword because people spend less and less time with the brand.
And I would jump in and say, I think I'm doing my job well when you see something that's really, really cool and you don't know it's an ad. And that's what we're competing with, is people's attention. If people are constantly spending time on their phone, that's why it's so important for us to work with influencers so that we can make sure that we're delivering stuff that feels really relevant to what your interests are, but also doesn't feel like, hey, like here's a billboard, here's your friend talking to you about this cool object that they just bought, or a cool song that they're listening to, etc. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's like a double-edged sword.
But I think like that's I think almost everyone at Wieden doesn't like ads, just like everybody else. And so like we want to make things people want to watch or engage with or share. Like that's the objective of almost everything we do.
Yep, agreed. Okay, there's a student question. Would you recommend a psychology minor if someone's planning on going into the marketing and media field?
Yes, I would say that's our whole social POV is people over platforms. Our job is, like I said, the social platforms change daily. So our job is to understand what people like, what they like to do, what there's trending, what's going on in culture. So the more you understand about how the mind works, I think you'll be a better marketer for sure.
I would, double down. It's like human behavior is what you need to know, right? Sociology is another good one. My favorite class in college was sociology, and I feel like it has a lot of similarities.
I loved it, but I feel like it was such a hard class for me, all the terms. But I don't know. My best friend was a psych major, so just listening to her in the way that she broke it down was always so interesting. And I had no idea that later on in life it's relevant.
I will say math was hard for me, and
now
I spend everybody's money, so there's still hope.
Do that.
That's why I'm in PR. I have avoided math since high school for a reason, and that's why I'm in PR.
I was like a senior in like math too. I was like, please just let me graduate. I was an honor student. They're like, yeah. Sorry.
and
Well,
learn. as you
I want to add to the question about minors, because one of the best pieces of advice I got in college, you might choose your major, and then you have additional credits to kind of like roll out some of these, your other areas that you need more credits to graduate. So like, how do you decide what else to kind of focus on? And the folks here touched on how psychology can be tremendously helpful to have that like human knowledge and understanding of how the mind works. But I want to add, one of the best pieces of advice I got in college was just, it was like, whatever you're interested in, like go get a minor in whatever interests you, whatever it like you're passionate to learn more about, because that stokes that curiosity that everybody's talking about here. And it also kind of lends itself into the point of having a point of view that Jenny talked about is so important. Go learn about something else, and then you get to bring that perspective into your work. And the example I have that I ended up doing was I got a minor in women and gender studies. And I had no idea how that would service me in my career. And now that is a huge topic every company is focused on and thinking about. So yeah, you never know, and just explore what you're interested in, be passionate about. Okay, there was a question here that I saw that I wanted to answer. Who are some of your biggest clients? So we got our start with Nike. So that was our first client, and we're still working with them today. And it's actually probably one of the longest examples of a client and agency partnership. Where Wieden and Kennedy is almost 40 years old. So we've been working with Nike for 40 years, which is pretty incredible. Do you guys want to jump in and share some of our other clients? Old Spice, you've heard Old Spice from these guys.
Fisher Price, also work on Visa. Expedia Group.
Trolley.
Trolley.
Trolley Candy. Samsung.
KFC,
Supercell.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's
Yeah. Okay, well, I had one more question for you guys before we like solely just focus on the chat and answering everybody's questions in the last 15 minutes. But can you guys all share something you don't like about your job? Because I think we all gravitate towards what we like, and sometimes it's just as important to learn what you don't like as it is to learn what you like. So if you had to be real with students for a moment, like what is your least favorite thing about your job?
The workload. Sorry. In this industry, there is a kind of always onness. So that's what's really hard. It's like you're given so many, like, you're paid well, you're given so many great perks. It's like you're given a lot of autonomy. So like you can work from a cafe, you can work from home, you're your own man, you're your own woman, you're your own person. But like the job does, I'm gonna say it owns you. Like it kind of owns you. You have to practice intense boundaries, because you will work weekends, you will work nights, you will work holidays. Like the deadline is kind of like God. And that part to me is something I really struggle with.
Thanks, Jenny.
That's my words.
I think maybe kind of related to that. The thing that I've always struggled with, and I think it's maybe just thinking about the type of job that you want, is advertising is not a job where there's a beginning and an end. It's always on, right? So I can give the example, I have a lot of friends that work in construction, or there's all sorts of fields where you look at a thing, you do it, it's done, you look at it and everyone goes, we did it right. And in advertising, you make the thing, you look at it, but then it's like, how can we do it better next time? What are we going to do next? How's this? And so it's not always on, or it's not only always on, but it's never complete. And so there is a sense of accomplishment, but if you're somebody that loves completion and like a beginning and end, this is not an industry that offers that. But I think it does it offers a lot of accomplishment and things like that along the way. But that's always been something that I'm like, man, sometimes I wish I could just look and go, I did that and it's right. And what's the next thing we're doing? Where I can look at it like that.
I feel you on that.
I would say there are always so many meetings. They're never ending. And I'm a person sometimes like I just want to sit in a room with a whiteboard and just like go off. But there's always another meeting to go to or do. So yeah, definitely get prepared for that. You have to really know how to manage your time if you're going to be in meetings to actually get work done, because you have to do work when you're outside of meetings. So yeah.
All right. Okay, so I saw one question in the chat, but to students and everybody listening, we're going to use this time for just open Q&A, because I'm sure everybody touched on something you want to learn more about or hear more about. Would you choose this career if you could make the decision again? What, if anything, would you do differently?
I would say, yeah, I think I actually went and got a master's degree in marketing, and in hindsight, like I didn't need it. So it's like if I could do anything again, I wouldn't have done that. And I think, you know, for those of you who are really interested in getting involved in like social or digital, I do think that you can take a pathway where you can go to school, but also I think creators are getting younger and younger. And if you can really hone your craft while you're in high school and continue working on it, I think there are a lot of agencies and creative opportunities for you that actually don't require a college degree.
I can go. I think I would, and I've been doing media for like 13 years. But I think also like the reason I think also like agencies are a good place to consider starting is it is also a gateway to tons of opportunity within kind of the business or like corporate world, even though that sounds like evil, because part of what we have to do every day is understand so many different businesses. Like I know everything about the banana business. And I also know, because I worked on Chiquita Bananas, and I also know a lot about the car business and a lot about the soda business and the social media business. Like you get to work on all these different types of businesses, and because of the nature of what we're doing, you kind of have to know everything about them. And so it can be a good long-term career, but it can also be a good pivot point because you're going to get schooled in a lot of different industries.
Yeah, and I think I would add that what's great about the field of communication, marketing, advertising, there's so much crossover in everything that we do. I work with Jason on projects, and I knew if I came to him and said I wanted to dive into media, that's probably something that we could at Wieden and Kennedy, like we could work out, we could find, I could shadow him, I could learn more, but like there's a lot of foundational knowledge and crossover in a lot of what we do. So while I had a degree in public relations and I had to pick that because the school forced you to pick something, I knew I could have picked advertising. I could have picked what the other options at the time were electronic media or news and editorial. And I felt like at any point in time, I could pivot into any of those fields because everything connects. And now here I am, the PR person at an ad agency. So yeah. Okay, let's see, a couple more questions. Do you need a degree for this job? What's the compensation? So
everyone fess up.
You're the PR person. You answer that.
Well, I will say I think that the industry is shifting, and I think up until a point you did need a college degree. But I know that there is, a lot of talk about changing that, and I can't say for certain that if Wieden and Kennedy has, but I know that that's part of our evolution and growth, and that's part of our desire to bring more perspectives and into advertising, is like, there are people who are incredibly talented creators right now out in the world who probably don't have a college degree. Why couldn't they work for Wieden and Kennedy? Why do you need that piece of paper? We hired, in the New York office, hired these two people who, they were called the Bubble Boys, and they were tweeting about the NBA playoffs last year, about what was going on during the playoffs. And they built a huge following by simply what they put out there on Twitter. And we hired them. Why would they need, that's why we hired them, for their skill set and their ability to create content and things people care about in culture. I think there's a existential question right now in our industry about why would you need the degree? But I can't answer that with certain on where we're at.
I would like to build on that.
Yeah.
I think there isn't one way to do it. Like, I didn't get a degree in advertising. I know a lot of people at Wieden who didn't. I think it can be a great way to maybe if you want to do it, you're either gonna have to go to school for it and build a portfolio, or you're just gonna have to do it and build a portfolio. You're just, either way, you're gonna have proof. So yeah, if you're just creating all these really great tweets, that kind of content, you just have to prove you can do it. You have to already be doing it in some sort of way, is the ultimate thing.
Yeah. I guess the best way to answer that is, you don't need a degree in advertising to work at an advertising agency.
Yeah.
One thing I'd also say, because I think there are routes around having a degree. One piece of advice would be I think making sure that you're creating and proving that you can do it is good, but also, because I think we're talking to folks from all over the state, choose to, or try to make sure that you do things after your high school experience that give you perspective, right? So whether that be living somewhere different, or making sure that you meet all sorts of different people, because I do think that perspective and kind of having a diverse experience yourself with lots of different people helps in this type of work. So make sure that you prioritize ways to do that. And there's lots of ways to do that, right? Be it volunteering, or, there's all sorts of paths. But I think that's important.
And I will add too that there are so many opportunities now where you can get internships or fellowships, or even residencies. So you can just Google, and there are so many different organizations that are offering ways. They have ad schools that you can do online, Ghetto Film School if you're interested in film. So definitely check online to see for any free resources, of course.
And I think the second part of that question was compensation, and I don't know the best way to answer that, but I think you could
Google it.
You can Google it for sure.
Google, what is the average salary for
But I would say
copywriter?
Google will definitely tell you, what a public relations coordinator makes. I think in advertising you could anticipate, and obviously this is changing too, right? Every year is different. You could anticipate a starting salary of probably between 40 to 60K, depending on what your discipline is. Some fields a strategist might earn more than a PR coordinator. So it kind of depends on your kind of discipline and field, but that's kind of my broad starting point, and then it can grow from there.
One person asked about soft skills, and I interpret that as like interpersonal skills. I think. Yes. So, so we're an agency, right? We're a service business. We only exist if clients choose to work with us. And being able to navigate relationships, resolve conflict, collaborate, not only internally and externally, like there's a bit of sales that's oriented towards that. Like you're going to find yourself at dinner one day with a client. Soft skills are important.
Yeah, I think too, because of the collaborative element, like you're it's so team oriented, like, and you have to be so flexible because ideas change for numerous reasons. It's like you're gonna have to be able to like work together and like communicate differences too. So soft skills are always a plus.
I think that was a lesson that I had to learn. I think, you know, being in social and being in an organization where it was kind of like siloed out. As I stepped into a leadership position, it was like you have to learn these soft skills in order to be able to lead a team. So it's so important that, you know, you learn how to communicate and collaborate with people. And that, you know, if you are a high performer, if you're in a role, that you're able to learn how to delegate tasks and even how to show people how to do things. So definitely make sure that you're honing in, because, you know, it's one thing to have like this really cool skill, but you also sometimes have to present to people. So knowing how to present and being able to speak up and stuff is so important. And when you learn how to do those things, you get offered more leadership roles, which is more money, which everybody wants.
I think it was said at the beginning, being okay with the word no, because you'll hear it over and over. And like soft skills are what are going to help you kind of get right around no to yes, generally what you were maybe saying. Yeah.
Yep. Lene dropped in our jobs page where you guys can find all of the listings for current openings. And we do, on the question about internships, we do have an internship. Our program's called a residency. And typically our applications typically will kind of announce call for submissions or applications around February 1 for like the summer season. So you can keep an eye out for that. When they go live, they'll be in our social media handles. So check Insta and Twitter for that. And then I see one more, maybe I think we have time for this last question. And Jenny, I think I'm gonna look to you for it. But
I've been looking at that question.
The question about portfolios.
How do you know if it's good? Coming, like, I don't know. I think this is going to be a little bit of a rogue answer. I think like it comes back to that like strong point of view. Like you really have to spend time with your work. You have to like be interested in what you're saying, and you have to know what you're saying. And I think like, yeah, like really like mastering your craft is pretty important. And then how do you like test that out? I think like I don't have the exact answer for that. Like how do you know other people think it's good too? Other than maybe like whatever you're making, like share it, like just keep sharing it. Like, and I think that is its own value that advertising agencies really care about. It's like, even if you don't get it right 100% of the time, which no one ever will, like you're just out there like sharing yourself, like you're sharing it, just kind of that like tenacity and like self-propelling kind of attitude. But yeah, I mean, you could, you know, try to create like a community, like, you know, like just even if you're not sharing it like to the world, like share it with your friends, share it with like teachers, share it with like people that you respect, that sort of thing. Like just like have a community around it that doesn't necessarily have to be like a professional community, but just like, you know, like talk about it with people, like poke holes in it with people, like don't just hide it. But as far, yeah, that's the best, that's the best starting off point to like, how do you even know if it's good? Like,
That makes sense.
Okay, well, I just want to say thank you guys for being here to talk with the students. I don't know if you guys saw, I think we had about 6 different schools. I don't know how many kids are behind those schools, but you guys had a very large group today.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. And
Thank you.
we
Thank you.
appreciate you wanting to learn more.
All right, then I won't hold you longer. You guys have a good day.
all
Thanks,
right, bye,
everyone.
thank you.
Thank you.